Hi, so this is my HST 355 presentation. I decided to write my paper about Thomas Aquinas and scholasticism. So I began my introduction by saying that religion was a strong foundation of early European peoples for centuries. Throughout history, kings and emperors and people in higher positions made their decisions based on the writings of religious leaders before them, and that was how theologian thinking influenced their lives. However, by 1100, this way of life really did see a big shift with the emergence of universities. So Thomas Aquinas, along with other Dominican scholasticism thinkers, believed that the way to understand and protect the Christian religion was to reason it out as a means of teaching it. So they believed that reason or science could actually help prove a lot of the miracles or the creation stories that went along with the Bible and Christian thinking. According to Theopedia, scholasticism attempted to reconcile the philosophy of the ancient classical philosophers with medieval Christian theology. And so that was something that had been introduced to universities throughout Italy, and then Thomas Aquinas actually helped build a new system that defined scholastic teaching and made an entire scholastic period throughout medieval Europe, and I believed that this was something that was very significant to look at. So universities actually did not exist until about the 12th century, as I said, in 1100. So after examining much of that history following the fall of the Roman Empire, it was unfortunate, but to begin precursor to the universities, a lot of learning material was lost after the fall of the Roman Empire, whether it was burned, thrown away, destroyed. It was gone. So many people did not have access to extra learning materials, although universities did have things such as the Bible, as well as a few other reference materials. It wasn't enough for the growing amount of people that wanted to learn now. So in monasteries, monks actually, their main language was Latin, and they took that language and they translated as much as they could from the reference text that they already had and created new reference tools, something that they had studied, and they created what they believed could have been lost, information that was possibly lost through the fall of the Roman Empire, which many of them had also experienced as well. So this gave them some sort of background and basis to start their writings and their research. So in Western Europe, a few surviving texts were scattered throughout the monastery libraries, and monasteries became a place of learning before universities and allowed young men in search of meaning and understanding to come and explore their libraries. So this also allowed more and more groups of people to find an area that they could become masters in, which increased the trade market. So that's what people chose to do with their skills, was to make it a career. So unfortunately, there was still a lack of materials. People could only learn from a certain amount, ones that the monks had translated or ones that did actually survive the fall of the Roman Empire. Because of the crudest translations, extra text was provided, like I said, that had already survived. Eventually more were recovered from Eastern Europe and better translated in the West, but still there are some that we still have never regained. So a modern definition of the term university is an educational institution designed for instruction, examination, or both, of students in many branches of advanced learning, conferring degrees in various faculties and often embodying colleges and similar institutions. So this was definitely something that is different now that we see today. That is not originally what universities are for. Originally, universities were a structured academic environment which is still the same today, but their meaning was slightly different in the fact that it was a group. It was an order, which is how Thomas Aquinas ended up becoming part of the Dominican order, because that is the sect of friars that he chose to follow. So Thomas Aquinas was born in 1225 and became one of the world's most well-known philosophers. So without the turmoil in religion, it's likely that we never would have known who Thomas Aquinas was. So it was not long after that he grew up and decided to begin his education with the Benedictine monks at Monte Cassino, as well as the University of Naples, that he joined the Dominican Order of Friars in 1244. So early in his life, Thomas had the ability to absorb a lot of material in very large sections. So he actually stunned his teachers with profound questions about God. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy wrote an article detailing the lives and works of Thomas Aquinas, and the article describes the time as that he was studying and became a part of the order as a critical juncture of Western culture when the arrival of the Aristotelian corpus in Latin translation reopened the question of the relation between faith and reason, calling into question the modus vivendi that had obtained for centuries. So it was definitely the society around Thomas Aquinas that made him the person who he was, and led him to the path that he eventually pursued. Without the turmoil between religion and reason, again, there really would be we would have no knowledge of St. Thomas Aquinas. So overall, this was definitely something that not everybody agreed with. Taking reason to explain religion was not something that everybody did. It was not something that every scholar chose to do, but it was definitely something that scholars had to question in order to get through some of the materials that they were provided with. And I believe that this is still something that some people can have a difficult time doing today, although a lot more of society is more open to combining both science and reason and religion, so science and religion. It is definitely something that has made its presence known and still has not been completely resolved even to this day. However, strides were made in medieval Europe where scholasticism presented itself, and the idea that it could be more than just a really good story, that maybe it could be true if it was explained, was something very, very key to building society in Europe as well as all over the world. So thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something.